The Championship has a brilliant record over the years for producing world-class stars, whether that's young talent cutting their teeth, lone players getting first-team experience, or even foreign players coming to England to showcase their talents on a bigger stage. There are shed loads of players in the second tier right now who will get a chance in the Premier League at some point. Many will become established players, others might even become some of the best in the country. Here on the second tier today, we're going to go through each Championship side and pick a player from that team who we think is most likely to be in the Premier League at some point. There's only one rule here: we're not picking loan players because that would be too easy. We're going from A to Z, so let's begin. Barnsley, Brad Collins. We begin things with the only goalkeeper on list, and based on how things have gone at Barnsley this season, it's easy to see why Brad Collins is on there. Because it's very easy to say that if he wasn't there, then Barnsley would be in an even worse position than they are right now at the time of recording. He has pulled off some world-class saves and in some games has been the clear man of the match because he's been keeping Barnsley in it. He's fantastic at coming off his line to sweep up balls. His distribution is brilliant, but it's his shot stopping which has really been the real icing on the cake for him this season. He's only 24, so still very young by goalkeeper standards. I've got full faith that this lad is going to be in the Premier League at some point. Maybe not as a first choice, but he will be a very solid goalkeeper to have in a squad. Birmingham City, Ivan Sunjic. Birmingham have actually made this choice quite difficult because they've got quite an old squad. They've only got two players under the age of 24 and they're both on loan, so obviously don't count. Therefore, I was left with only a couple of real choices, and Ivan Sunjic seems the most likely one to me. He has got everything you want in a ball-winning midfielder. He's still in his mid-20s. They signed him for a hefty price from Croatia a few seasons ago. I think we're talking about £5 or £6 million. So he definitely comes with a lot of pedigree. He's shown in the time that he has been in the Championship that he's very capable of winning the ball back. He can play the ball. He can even score the occasional screamer as well. Of the people who would feature in this video, he's probably one of the ones least likely to be in the Premier League at some point because of what I was talking about with a lack of options at Birmingham. But he's probably the most capable in Birmingham's squad of being in the Premier League at some point. Blackburn Rovers, Ben Brereton Diaz. This one's a pretty obvious choice for anyone who follows the Championship at the moment. The Chilean sensation Ben Brereton Diaz has been tearing it up this season, and it'll be no surprise to see Premier League clubs all over him over the next few months or so, mainly because his contract expires next summer and it seems like he's inevitably going to be ending up in the Premier League, or maybe even somewhere like Spain or Chile, who knows. But he is more than capable of being in the Premier League. He's got the stature, he's a big physical lad, he's quick, he can bully defenders off the ball, but he's shown now this season that he can score goals, he can dribble, he can create chances, he can even win headers that are put into the box when it's at the back post for him to get onto the end of. He's a real all-round inside forward, and it almost looks certain that he will be playing at the top flight of English football because he's still a young lad. It's very easy to forget that he is still early 20s, and so if not this season or next season, he will be there at some point in the near future. Blackpool, Shane Lavery. Lavery really has been one of the signings of the season in the Championship without a shadow of a doubt. He came over from Northern Ireland with not much expectation. I think many people were expecting Jerry Yates to be Blackpool's main goal scoring threat this season, but Lavery has really taken up that mantle and really outshone Jerry Yates in that department. He's come in as a left inside forward and he chops in from the left and then has been scoring goals pretty freely really. He's been one of the highest players in the division for individual expected goals this season, showing that he's getting in the right in the right positions constantly. He's only 22, he's got great feet, he's a great finisher, he works hard as well, and he's quite nippy, so plenty of people will be keeping an eye on how he develops for the Seasiders. AFC Bournemouth, Dominic Solanke. Anyone who remembers seeing Solanke play in the Premier League will probably remember him as a bit of a joke figure because he was at Liverpool, at Bournemouth, at Chelsea. Everyone was tipping him to be one of the stars of the future, not just in the Premier League but also for England, even making a cap for England in 2012. But he was really struggling to score goals, and it was quite obvious that his confidence was shot. Coming down to the Championship has been a brilliant move for him. He's managed to develop his confidence back up and really make himself into the player I think many people were expecting. He's the perfect all-round striker. He's strong, quick, has a good touch, can dribble, can set up chances, and now, crucially of all, has been a goal-scoring threat for Bournemouth this season. He's only been top for goals this season by Alexander Mitrovic, but Solanke has really shown himself to be the player that I think many people were expecting. And now, when he is back in the Premier League, because considering how Bournemouth are going, it looks pretty inevitable that he will be in the Premier League again at some point. He will be a much better striker than the player that we saw before. Bristol City, Alex Scott. This lad only turned 18 in August, but has shown himself to be more than capable of handling it with some of the Championship's most experienced midfielders. He can play as a number 10, can play as a number 8, he's a great passer, has great intelligence for his age, and is also working very hard for the side as well. He's played most of Bristol City's games this season, and coming from a team that's managed by Nigel Pearson, someone who hasn't necessarily got a record for developing young players, he's really broke that mould, and Pearson has shown a lot of faith in him so far this season. He hasn't exactly been pulling up trees, but I mean, we are talking about someone who has only just turned 18, and the fact that he's playing as regularly as he is for Bristol City is really special, and as the time goes on, he's only going to get better and better. Cardiff City, Ruben Colwill. For me, this guy is one of the most talented young players outside of the Premier League. He has got great intelligence, and he's got pretty much everything you'd want from a number 10 actually. He's only 19 and has already been involved in the Wales setup. He's got plenty of plaudits from people over in Wales, and at Cardiff he's getting more of a look in now that Steve Morrison is in charge of the club at the time of recording. But he's a really promising player. He's someone who's really exciting and has already grabbed a few goals for Cardiff this season. Someone I'm really looking forward to seeing get better and better, but he's undoubtedly looking like one of Wales's best talents to come out of the country in quite some time. Coventry City, Gustavo Hammer. There are quite a few players who I could have chosen from Coventry. Callum O'Hare was probably the one many people were expecting me to go with, but I've gone with Gustavo Hammer because he's someone who I think has really got the capabilities of playing in the Premier League. He's in his mid-20s now, but has great intelligence, he's got great vision, he's brilliant at dribbling with the ball, and he can definitely put in crosses, get assists. He's the perfect package for a creative midfielder. The only thing that probably lets him down is his temperament, because he does like to pick up a few cards, but he's also good at set pieces, which is something I probably should have mentioned before. He just tips it for Callum O'Hare, someone who I think is probably lacking a bit of final end product, and I still think he has got problems with consistency at times. For me, Gustavo Hammer produces it most weeks, so that's why I'm picking him just over any other Coventry player. Derby County, Jason Knight. Despite everything that's going on at Derby at the moment, they've got plenty of young players who are really showing themselves to be great prospects, no matter where the club is going to be next season or in the next seasons coming after that. Jason Knight is someone who I really rate. You could have picked Max Bird, Louis Sibley, Buchanan, but for me Jason Knight is someone who I could definitely see in the Premier League because he works so hard. He's got that graft that I think a lot of Premier League managers will really admire. Someone like Sean Dyche, for example, Jason Knight is almost certain to end up at Burnley at some point, but he's a really good player. He's also versatile, can play on the wing, can play further forward, can also play slightly deeper in the centre of midfield. He's someone who many managers will really like to have in their side because of his work rate, but he's also got on the ball as well, can pick a pass, can score, and can also put in crosses. Fulham, Fabio Carvalho. I imagine it's broken quite a few Fulham hearts for me to pick Fabio Carvalho because his contract is expiring, and according to latest reports he's turned down the chance to sign a new deal to stay at Craven Cottage. Whether that's the right thing for his development is another conversation for another day, but there is no doubt that Fabio Carvalho is a very talented player. For me personally, I think he's one of the most talented players we have seen in the Championship in quite some time. I'm putting him in the likes of, Gareth Bale or Ryan Sessegnon in terms of players who have really set the Championship alight despite being such a young age. It's unfortunate that he's not seemingly playing as much at the moment, but in the first few games of the season when he was playing, for someone who is so young, he's only just turned 19, he has got such intelligence, such great vision, is a brilliant dribbler, great passer, he's a goal threat as well. He's got everything you'd want, and for someone as young as him, it's very easy to see why the likes of Real Madrid and Barcelona have reportedly been keeping their eyes on him. So he's going to end up at a big club at some point, but for me, he's one of the most talented players we've seen in the Championship for quite some time. Huddersfield Town, Lewis O'Brien. O'Brien is someone who has been linked with a Premier League move for the last couple of windows now, in particular Leeds United. And it's easy to see why, because he is a great box-to-box midfielder. He works hard, can score goals as well, is a great passer. He's only 22, someone who I'm really excited to see develop. Pretty similar with every other person on this list, actually. But O'Brien is someone who, as I say, has been linked with a move to the Premier League at some point, so he's probably one of the more likely ones to be playing at the top flight very soon. Hull City, Keane Lewis Potter. Lewis Potter's probably someone I was expecting to have a better season than he has done, but I feel like that's more down to the manager than it is him. But nonetheless, he's still a very, very good player. We saw that in League One last season with Hull when he scored 13 goals and set up plenty more. He is being tipped by many Hull fans to be a better prospect than Jarrod Bowen, and we only have to look at how he's doing at West Ham now to know how much of a compliment that is. But nonetheless, Keane Lewis Potter is a very good player. Under the right manager, I feel like he could be a brilliant, brilliant player, and will only get better considering how well he's done at such a young age already. Luton Town, James Bree. This guy was being tipped for big things when he was at Barnsley, because that led to Aston Villa paying quite a bit of money for him. He didn't get much of a chance at Aston Villa, but now he's gone to Luton where he's playing regular football and is really looking like the player I think many people were expecting him to be. He's a really solid right back, brilliant at defending. He's quite big compared to some other right backs in the division, which is only very helpful when it comes to taking on the likes of Brereton Diaz and other big burly left wingers. But he's also good at going forwards as well. He's a brilliant crosser of the ball, and for Luton to get him for what I think was not very much at all was a really good bit of business from themselves, and now they can fully expect him to be sold on for quite a bit of money if they don't end up in the Premier League at some point in the near future. Middlesbrough, Josh Coburn. At the time of recording, this lad is only 18 and has only played a handful of games for Middlesbrough, but plenty of fans want to see a lot more of him, and it's easy to see why, because in the short time that he has played, he has scored quite a few goals compared to the amount of times that he's been playing, and has shown himself to be a really clever striker despite being so young. It's also worth pointing out he's 6'2", so when you've got an 18-year-old who is quite big, that is usually something that quite a few managers really like to see in a player. But he's a really intelligent striker, good finisher as well from the short cameos that we've seen of him so far. He looks like a really, really bright prospect coming out of the Riverside Stadium, and someone I also want to see a lot more of as well. Millwall, Jed Wallace. Millwall are another one who have quite an old squad. They've only got one player under the age of 25 who's played more than 10 games this season, and that's Billy Mitchell. And even then, he's had his chances in the first team quite limited this season. I think the obvious answer here is Jed Wallace, and I say that because his contract is expiring in the summer, and I think many Millwall fans are resigned to the idea that they're not going to be seeing him in a Millwall shirt for much longer. Whether he'll go to the Premier League or not is up in the air. I suspect he probably will do, unless a Premier League club who gets relegated decides to fork out a lot of money for him, or a Championship club does the same thing. Either way, he is clearly proven himself now to be too good for the Championship for quite some time. He has been Millwall's main goal-scoring threat, and over the years has also set up plenty of goals as well. If they didn't have Jed Wallace, I think it'd be safe to say Millwall would have been in a bit of trouble over the past few seasons. He has been a one-man team at times, and they're going to sorely miss him when he does eventually leave, but there's no doubt that Jed Wallace is a Premier League player. It's just whether a Premier League club actually forks out for him. Nottingham Forest, Brennan Johnson. Forest have always had a reputation for producing good young players, and Brennan Johnson looks to be probably one of the most talented players to come out of the Forest Academy in quite some time. He was on loan at Lincoln last season, was really tearing it up. Many Forest fans were questioning, why isn't he playing for us this season? And now he is at Forest this season. When I say this season, before I meant last season. But this season, he has really been tearing it up for Forest. He's been playing sometimes in a front three with Zinkernagel and Graben, other times on the wing or behind the striker. Either way, wherever you put him, he has been absolutely brilliant. He's been Forest's most consistent attacking threat this season, and it's really, really exciting to watch for many Forest fans, and they're all going to sorely miss him when he does eventually go, because he has been attracting a lot of interest from Premier League clubs. I think Brentford and Leeds were amongst the clubs who were keeping an eye on him last summer, and considering how he's been doing this season, that interest is only going to intensify. So yeah, Brennan Johnson's a really, really exciting player, probably one of the most exciting players on this list actually. Peterborough United, Harrison Burrows. This guy's only 19 but has played in pretty much every game for Peterborough this season, and has also played in pretty much every position. He's been playing at wing back, he's been playing in centre midfield, he's been playing left wing, right wing. He can do it all, but he's proven himself to be a real team player, and I not just say that because he's been playing wherever Darren Ferguson's been telling him to play, but he is a really hard worker as well. He's someone who I think plenty of managers, similar to other players who I've mentioned before on this list, so plenty of managers in the Premier League will be looking at him and thinking, right, he's the kind of player that I want in my squad, because he does work hard and is clearly all about the team. But considering he's only 19, he's shown great intelligence so far. He's shown that he's more than capable of handling himself in the Championship, and it's really pleasing to see. Someone I'm a big fan of as well. Preston North End, Emil Rees-Jakobsen. Preston fans have been crying out for a quality striker for quite some time, and it turns out Emil Rees-Jakobsen may finally be that striker. He's only 23, but has been scoring goals pretty freely for North End this season. He's been scoring them from all over the place as well. He's been scoring screamers, he's been scoring headers, he's been scoring from inside the box. He's proven himself to be a real good all-round striker. He's strong as well, he's relatively quick. He's the perfect all-round striker, and that's why Preston fans absolutely love this guy. They've been turning up with Denmark flags to plenty of games this season. Whether they hold on for him for too much longer is up in the air, because the way he's been going, it wouldn't surprise me for Premier League clubs to be showing an interest in him. But Preston, another of those clubs who I'm struggling really to find many players who could be playing in the Premier League soon, but Emil Rees-Jakobsen is definitely the clear and obvious choice for me. Queen's Park Rangers, Chris Willock. Many QPR fans were probably expecting me to go for Elias Chair for this pick, or maybe even Rob Dickie, but I've gone for Chris Willock because he's someone I'm a really, really big fan of. He's only 23 years old, and he is of course the brother of Joe Willock, who plays for Newcastle, but for me, Chris Willock is really looking like a really top prospect. He's really versatile. At times this season he's had to play at left wing back, but he's usually a number 10 and is everything you'd want in a number 10. He can dribble, he can score, he's scored plenty of beautiful goals so far this season, and is brilliant with his vision and setting up chances as well. He is a really, really talented player, someone I think is a Premier League player already. Reading over Ejaria. Earlier in his career, Ejaria was being called the English Pogba when he was at the Liverpool Academy. He hasn't lived up to the expectations that many people were expecting him to, but at Reading he's proving himself to be a really, really talented player. He creates loads of chances, he's a brilliant dribbler, he's got really long limbs as well, which is great when it comes to out-muscling and running past defenders. He's just lacking in certain parts of his game really, that's stopping him from becoming a Premier League player. He possibly doesn't work hard enough, he certainly doesn't score enough goals considering some of the positions he manages to find himself in, but nonetheless he has shown in glimpses that he is a really talented player. All he's got to do is tweak little bits of his game, and then he will almost certainly be a Premier League player at some point. He's only 23, so time is on his side. Sheffield United, Iliman Ndiaye. Many people behind the scenes at Sheffield United are very, very excited about Ndiaye. At the start of the season, he was being talked about in the same breath as Kyle Walker as one of the best prospects to come out of Bramall Lane in many, many years. In the time that he's been playing for Sheffield United so far, he's shown in spits and spats that he's a very talented player. He probably hasn't, really made as much of a difference as many people were expecting, but he, as I say, he has shown in little periods that he is a really, really talented player. He's only 21, but he's brilliant at dribbling. He manages to find himself in really good positions. Finishing is probably something that lets him down at times, but I have no doubt that eventually that will come good. If he manages to reach the potential that many people were expecting him to at Sheffield United, then we could be looking at a really, really talented player at Sheffield United. Stoke City, Harry Souttar. I'm not going to lie, Harry Souttar is one of my favourite centre-halves in the division, probably actually one of my favourite players in the whole division. I really, really rate him as a player, and it's no surprise to see the likes of Everton and West Ham being interested in his services. He's talked about as the next Harry Maguire, which I'm not sure is a compliment or not, but I can certainly see the similarities between the two, because they've both got big heads, but they're also very good at using those big heads. Harry Souttar's 6'7", which is always a positive for him, but he's brilliant in the air, as you probably expect. He's strong. He's also deceivingly quick as well, which is not something you expect to see from someone who is as big as him. Another thing you wouldn't expect to see from someone as big as him is being able to be good on the ball, but this lad is brilliant at it. He plays these wonderful, cross-field passes, Hollywood passes to the wing-backs or any wingers who are playing out wide, and he's brilliant at it. He's someone I really rate. I'm undoubtedly going to see him in the Premier League at some point, and it looks like, from the sounds of it, considering the interest that he's been getting, it could be very, very soon. Swansea City, Joel Pirro. When Swansea signed this 22-year-old striker from PSV Eindhoven, who hadn't really played that many games over in Holland, I was a bit sceptical about what they have actually seen in this guy. But judging from what we've seen this season, it seems like they were completely right to sign him, because he has been fantastic. He's another guy who is a brilliant all-round striker. He's strong, can hold up the ball, relatively quick as well, can dribble, can set up chances. He can do it all, but his main strength is finishing chances, because he is absolutely brilliant at it and has scored plenty of goals for Swansea this season. Has really taken up the mantle that Andre Ayew left behind in scoring the vast majority of Swansea's goals, and his link-up play with Jamie Patterson this season has been a real joy to behold. So he's someone I'm really expecting big things from Pirro, especially if he continues to show the form that he has done throughout the whole season. And finally, West Bromwich Albion, Colin Grant. If West Brom are to get back to the Premier League this season, then it's going to massively depend on the form of Colin Grant. And judging from how he's been going so far this season, it looks like he's still got all the talents that we've seen every time he's been in the Championship. When he was at Huddersfield before, he was scoring goals for fun. Even when they were briefly in the Premier League and Colin Grant was there, he was scoring quite a few goals despite not playing as many minutes as he probably should have been. Last season for West Brom in the Premier League, he was struggling a bit, but now that he's dropped back down to the Championship, he's managed to find his goal scoring spirit once again, and it's really made him back into the striker that many people love to see. He is brilliant. He can play up front, he can play coming in off the left hand side, but his finishing is just marvellous. He's really quick as well. He can dribble. His first touch, brilliant. He's probably one of the best finishers the division has to offer, quite frankly, and I'll be very surprised if we don't see him in the Premier League once again, considering he is only 24. He's someone for me who I think is too good for the Championship, and considering how he's been doing for West Brom this season, he's going to be so important to their chances of getting back to the Premier League. So there you have it. I've gone through every single Championship side and picked a player who I think is likely to play in the Premier League at some point in their career. Let me know in the comments section below which player from your club you think is most likely to play in the Premier League. Also, any other players from your club who you think is going to be in the top flight eventually. Maybe even other players from other clubs. I'm always interested to hear what you guys have to say on anything to do with the Championship. So please like and also subscribe for more content like this in the near future. I've been Ryan Dilks. You can follow me on Twitter right here. This has been The Second Tier, and thank you for watching.